G'day everyone, welcome to another 360 Partners video. Today, something pretty exciting. We've got a new specialist team member here. Welcome, Jason O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you, James.
I got that right, didn't I?
You did. You've known me for over 5 years.
O'Shaughnessy, whatever, tomato. So Jason is an expert in all things lending and finance and funding. So Jason, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I've been in banking and finance now for about 13, 14 years. So started off in corporate property in Bankwest before moving across to business bank at the National Australia Bank, where I did relationship management roles, and then more recently ran one of their business centres, looking after a diverse range of industries and bankers.
Yeah, great. Jason was a business banker for quite some time, so we can certainly vouch from his experience in business banking. And how did that go, Jason? I mean, the business banking, you've obviously stuck with it, so you've really enjoyed it.
Loved it. So, it was a little bit different from some of the earlier stuff I did. I actually worked in an accounting firm as a junior accountant for a while.
Won't hold that against you.
Yeah, some smaller manufacturing companies coming through uni. So, the good thing was seeing how a large corporation works. And then I've also seen how smaller businesses work. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was with smaller business was how client focused they are, which is always something that I wanted to get back to. I think that the banking industry's probably lost that a little bit, and they've been maybe progressing further away from that. So this has really provided an opportunity for me to get back in front of the customer and the client, and really hold these relationships not for 2 years, but for the next 25, 30 years.
So I guess that comes back to something that I've heard you talk about a lot, and I know it's a really important thing to you in the way that you like to conduct your business, and that's customer focus. I think I've heard you talk about some of your concerns in business banking in Australia and the inability for large banks to really maintain customer focus. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it's hard to maintain a customer focus when there's not that tenure in role. It's harder to maintain a customer focus when you're a larger organisation. And as I said, I'm only comparing how I used to interact with clients and customers when I was in small business to being in a larger business, and I prefer it in a smaller business because you've got consistency, and I can stay with the customers in this role for 25, 30 years, and also you can service customers better and find better solutions for them if you've got a whole market out there rather than just a bank funding market. It's like if I worked for a private lender, well, there would be only a certain level of lending that I would be looking at, and I wouldn't be looking at the bank funding. So that's what's really attractive about what I want, which is to be client focused, where this career can actually really support that by letting me actually find solutions for clients no matter what the problems are.
Yeah, it's very important, isn't it? And the same really applies in any professional service, accounting, legal, whatever it happens to be. At the end of the day, if you can't focus on what's best for the customer and the solution that's important for them, it does make it a little bit problematic.
Yeah, you always want to be able to find a solution. Sometimes you can't, but it's not about, hey, we can't do this. It's about, this is what you need to do to be able to get it, and here are the different range of options. I've been doing this for 3 months, and it's been really exciting to do it because I find so many more solutions now for customers. Banks are now really only doing a smaller and a more compressed part of the funding market because they're so heavily regulated by APRA. And I've really been in the banks, been unable to assist so many clients because they actually need different funding options which aren't available to the banks. So to be able to help clients in their entirety, you actually can't do it in a bank. You've got to go do it in more of a finance broking role.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? So it's really coming full circle and going back from the days probably when you were first beginning, where the banks were putting all resources into true client service. and as they've cut those resources out, despite what they say, which we all hear every second day on every bank's TV ad, cutting those resources back has probably meant for teams that you've seen and managed that it's increasingly difficult for them to provide that type of service.
Yeah. I mean, I went from having 24 staff down to 12 in a matter of 2 years.
Yeah.
And that impacts the customers significantly.
Yeah.
And then, they're so heavily regulated as well. A customer who needs some finance and we can't arrange it, we have to say no. And that's not in my nature, because I want to find different avenues for clients. I want to be able to give them guidance on, well, if we can't do it now, this is what we need to do to be able to get there. Yeah, it is. And when you talk to resources and you talk to appetite for credit and being able to fund, I mean, that's why you've seen so many different private lenders get into the market. You've got these neobanks, fintech banks. They're all seeing.
Tell me a little bit about those. What I've heard of sort of the fintech. What are neobanks?
So neobanks are essentially just being new banks that don't necessarily have the cumbersome infrastructure behind them, so they can be a little bit more nimble.
Yep.
A lot of these new funding avenues are pretty specific in what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to go. And they've either said there's a market where the banks aren't helping people and we can help people here, or it's just really efficient to get into there.
So do you think it'd be fair to say on that then, Jason, that for small businesses in Australia, that their banking solutions are now better than they have been for quite some time?
I think certainly there are a lot more options available to small businesses. It's probably not as efficient as it was previously if you had just a relationship with a large bank who would help you with all your needs. Now you might have to go try and find other solutions from elsewhere, and that can be difficult. But once again, that's just being able to sit there and help clients find those offerings, which you can't do in a large bank. You need to be external of the actual system to provide those solutions.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think banking for your own personal banking for residential property and also commercial banking for businesses, it's certainly, there's a perception out there that it's difficult to move around, and you hear the phrase lazy tax, that people don't really spend enough time evaluating their options. Is that something that you see?
Yeah, look, it certainly is, and I think we'll have to do a whole video on the pricing mechanisms of the banks.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed to see how many margins and different commissions and bases there are actually in those fees and interest rates that you get charged.
Yeah.
Yes, it has been previously very, very hard to move banks, and that's because of the old infrastructure for which they were built.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the fintechs and the neobanks are starting to come in and assist, and making it a lot easier to, through technology, move around the banks. And you've probably even seen a lot of this in even the existing structures. So we've got the Osco Pay system now, which means that if you bank, say, CBA and I bank ING, we can transfer $5,000 basically straight away.
So is that a cap of 5,000? That's their sort of...
It's it varies between the institutions and
that's an instant transfer.
Instant transfer.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
We're also leaning towards open banking, which will mean that essentially ING, if I'm with ING and you're with CBA, and I wanted to move to CBA could basically get all the information from ING. So it's
is that a government regulation thing that's trying to encourage that?
It's saying that you bank with CBA or NAB, you own that data, not the bank. Yeah. So that data should be available to go wherever you want it to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, look, very helpful to get your insight today, Jason, on some of these developments in business banking, and obviously welcoming you to soon to be probably working with some of our clients and new clients, which will be really helpful for them. We've seen a little bit of that already. And increasingly what we'll do is run through some various more specific videos, as Jason said. We'll go through some things like lazy tax. I think you mentioned there's a whole video in that.
Yeah.
So
Probably an hour's worth.
probably an hour's worth. We'll try and keep it. But I think the point is that Jason's got a lot of knowledge that is quite insightful, and we'll have a series of videos where we can impart some of this, and it'll be really valuable to you, irrespective of whether you ever get Jason's help in any of your banking solutions. I think Jason's pretty happy to share some recommendations for you.
A lot of the time it's just a bit of help with the conversation with your existing lender to really make sure that they are looking after you.
Some of those tough conversations.